There's quite a lot going on when it comes to tech and when it comes to Europe. We'll talk about Meta in a second, but what kind of, how are you expected to be received by the U.S., given everything that President Trump has said about Europe slamming tech?
Well, I think that it is very obvious that we need to defend and to implement, to enforce our rules, to defend the market, a well-functioning market, a competitive market, where there can be an option for players to provide their offers and for consumers to decide which option they prefer. So the abuse of a dominant position in a given market that prevents any other alternative for final users is not good news for anyone. And it is not good news in Europe. It is not good news in the United States. And in this case, we are worried because we sense that this may be the case when forbidding the access of other providers of AI instruments that use WhatsApp. So this is the message that we wanted to send to Meta. Why we do not start thinking of an interim measure preventing this stop of available options.
Yeah. Commissioner, when you're saying that Meta risks a temporary European Union ban, how do you think the U.S. will react to it?
I think that for anyone being at the forefront of any institution, we respect the enforcement of the law. So I don't know how it may be read by any government, but my sense is that this is not connected to politics, but connected to well-functioning markets and protection of consumers.
I'm not sure the Trump administration will view it necessarily in exactly the same way, but I want to ask you a more broad question about AI and regulation. Obviously, this is a technology that will disrupt the world in a number of different ways. It's a new sort of area of functioning. Are we going to see more cases like what we're seeing against Meta, against other technology firms? And what kind of concerns are you seeing in terms of concentration and antitrust in the world of AI more broadly?
We are not looking into the origin or the headquarters of any given company. In this announcement that we have made today, these interim measures, Italy has already taken a similar approach. We are opening a procedure so that if Meta does not agree, they can defend, they can take whatever information they bring to the table to respond to our question, and it is not a final decision. I think that AI is changing the world. We all, consumers, citizens, providers of public services, providers of private services, industrials, rely very much on the quick development of digital services and AI. And I think that it is good that there can be many players that could challenge the traditional incumbents. So it's good to be successful, and it is also important to ensure that those looking into the future are not prevented to develop their services because of those that have succeeded in the past. Great to compete, great to have these open markets for everybody.
And in another area that's not quite as new as AI, but still relatively new, is this world of streaming. And we now have this sort of potential acquisition by Netflix of Warner Brothers. This is something that certainly will attract some scrutiny from you. In a sort of preliminary fashion, what kind of concentration risk do you see from those deals? Do you see one of the two offers as more risky? And have you had any contact with any of the CEOs involved?
No, we haven't got any contact, and of course it is quite clear that this is something which is not quite clear yet what it is going to happen. So we follow what it is going on, and we will be paying attention to whatever operation, consolidation, acquisition may take place. For the time being, it is not clear. So the bids are there, the discussions are there. We will have an eye on what it could mean for the European markets, as it is the case in the United States. But there is no operation to be assessed yet now. Not yet, sorry.
Commissioner, could you talk to us also a little bit about Google? So what's your vision for how Google should operate in the EU? And could you ever see a Google that's actually different in the EU than it is to the US?
I think that Google is quite a relevant player both in the United States and the European Union. And I think that in certain markets, in certain services, they have a very relevant position. In others, they are not the front runners. There are others that have taken a higher share of the market. And I think that it is quite important to remind ourselves that we came up with a regulation to introduce predictability on what it is the expectations in terms of the obligations and the rights in an upfront manner, so that any gatekeeper, anyone having a relevant position in a given market could know upfront what it could mean to ensure that users were protected.
Since the last time you spoke to Bloomberg, has your thinking about Google's ad tech changed at all?
Sorry, that I didn't get your question.
What's next for Google? Is there anything in terms of ad tech or something else that you don't like when you look at Google?
Oh yes. Sorry. I hadn't heard that. No, I think that that is where we are right now, and I know that Google is making effort and having conversations with the services, so to ensure that this very important flourishing business case in terms of advertising through the different technological platforms are not restricted or is being biased by any given preference towards Google's decisions, toward Google's priorities or preferences. And the efforts are ongoing. So we have heard, we have paid attention to the decisions being made in the United States, including by the courts, and I think that it is good that we go along similar lines in the different jurisdictions, but the process is not yet over. So we will be coming up once we have a clear understanding on how far we can ensure that the final solution is equal, inclusive, and does not discriminate competitors.
And so we've dealt a lot with the sort of U.S. side of things. You're also looking at things on the China side of things, subsidies into, for example, wind energy. This is an investigation that you have now launched. If you could give us a little bit more in terms of what you're looking at specifically from China. And this is a criticism, illegal subsidies from China, that we see not just sort of leveled against the wind industry, but across many other industries from a number of people in Europe. Do you expect to have more investigations in order to prevent that sort of dumping into the European market at this very critical moment for European competitiveness?
Yes, this is something that came up last week. We have been working on that for a while already, and we want to clarify and to ensure that we will pay attention to prevent any illegal subsidy that could undermine the level playing field in the European market. Of course, wind is a very powerful way to produce electricity, and it has a huge interesting and modern industrial value chain behind, and we are proud of what it has been done in Europe, complying with high standards both in social and environmental rules and innovation and so on and so on. If anyone wants to enter into the European market, we are more than happy, but it is important to be transparent and not to dump on prices.